Hello and welcome to another episode of the Eunice Ajim Show. I am your host, Eunice Ajim, and over the next couple of videos, I really want to take a step back and chat about why investing in African startups is so interesting. I'm constantly just sharing a lot of content on how investors can get started investing on the continent. But a lot of the times, the first question that anybody asks is hey, Eunice, aren't you scared? We're all Africans, we know the reality of the continent, but I also think that a lot of people miss on the right opportunity because of their fear of either losing money or getting scammed or all the crazy things that everybody's always talking about. And I think if you get past that fear, you will see that there are actually so many opportunities that are way less risky than what you would typically find in the US. So, you guys have heard this story a lot, but I just think it makes sense to reiterate why I got started investing in the African continent. In 2020, my team and I decided that we wanted to hire African developers. In fact, I was actually the one that pushed a lot for it. And it's not because, I didn't think I could find amazing engineers. It's just because I wanted to put Africa on the map when you're thinking about looking for engineers or software engineers across the world. So I decided, okay, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to find software engineers to equip our engineering team. It took me a couple of months, but I found them. We ended up hiring a team of across Nigeria, Kenya, and Rwanda. But it wasn't easy. The first struggle that I went through was finding that talent. I was like, oh my gosh, it is so easy in the US to just go on Indeed or any of these other platforms and just say, I'm looking for X number of people with this much experience, send me their resume or share my job description with them. I couldn't find a platform that was very specific, just like the African community. But it's fine. I figured out a way and then I found my talents. And then when we brought them on board, the next challenge that we had was payroll. Each of those African markets had different jurisdictions, had different legal, and we're like, well, there should be a payroll platform out there that can help us hire all of these African engineers. And we couldn't. We had to figure out new structures with some of the payroll organizations that we already had, and it was a pain in the butt. We're like, okay, we pass through this, next. The next thing was payroll, but actually sending the money. In most US business bank account, it's still very difficult to wire money directly to Nigeria. We had to go to the bank at the end of every month, manually wire the money, and it would take 5 to 10 business days for the employee to get it. Not a great experience for the employee, not a great experience for me, the employer. And I think at that stage, I was just okay, I have to do something about it. And then I just started to look for people that were solving those problems. I made a post on LinkedIn, I reached out to my network, and people were like, yeah, there are actually people trying to solve this problem. And the more I dig in, the more I realized that there were amazing African founders building technology to be able to fix those problems. And that was my introduction to some extent into the African tech ecosystem. When I found Talent QL and All School, I got excited. I'm like, oh my gosh, now I have a platform where I can easily go out there and hire engineers without having to worry about the quality or where to find them. Awesome. One of the founders, one of the engineers in our company at the time, knew that we were struggling with wiring money for our employees at the end of the month and started building the technology while he was working for us. This founder was Favor and he was building Payday. In fact, he pitched us the company while he was building it and while he was working for us, which is something I probably shouldn't do. But that's what he did. And, eventually when I left the company, I thought he was doing something meaningful. I invested. The more I came across cross-border platforms, that's how I got into Lemonade Finance or Lemfi right now. That's how I got into so many other deals, because I was like, oh my God, I saw the value. I saw how much traction this founder had. I saw how much dedicated they were, motivated to like fix this problem, not only for themselves, but so many other people that were experiencing it. And at the end of the day, the way to be a successful founder, the way to be a successful investor is when you find an opportunity and the demand is there. It's a painkiller. It's not a want, it's a need. Now you know you have a business. And I knew there were opportunities because I was a client of so many of those products. By the end of 2021, I had invested in 10 companies. And that was the moment when my husband was like, okay, chill, Eunice, like we don't make that much money. You can just go out here and invest in all of these companies. And then I said, you know what? I just raised roughly about 3.2 million for my company. How do VCs get money to invest in startup founders? And again, just being crazy curious, doing so much research and understanding the thought process, like where do you get money? How do you, like structure your fund? How do you write checks? How do you do due diligence? And then I tell you know what, I think I can do this. I'm going to figure it out and I'm going to invest in these African tech companies. I think there's so much opportunity. In fact, I'm recording this podcast right now in Lagos, Nigeria. And I just think that there are so many opportunities that are happening here on the continent. We have so many problems, and they say young, motivated, just entrepreneurial youth that are excited to figure out ways to solve those problems. So, who invests in startups? I like to categorize them into a few phases. We have angel investors, which are typically high net worth individuals. In the US, you have to be an accredited investor. I'll go into a little bit more detail into the next video on like what that means. Angel investors, which means that you make enough money and you're willing to invest some of that capital into startups. And I don't always recommend that, investing in startup is the first investment opportunity. There are a lot of opportunities out there that are a little bit less risky and that are a little bit more liquid. So investing in startup is very risky and it's very illiquid. So I don't always recommend it as a first investment medium when you're thinking about investing your money. You can start with real estate. You can start with some people even do private debt. You can start with the public market. S&P 500 is a very big one. You can even do bonds. You can have life insurance. Like I made like a full pack video on like different investment asset class out there, like the ones that are a little bit less risky, not as much return as startup investing, but the best ones to start with when you're just getting started. So angel investors. The next ones are typically incubators and accelerator programs. An incubator, and really the difference between an incubator is typically like an incubator is like very early stage. It's like when you have an idea and you're trying to figure out how in the world do I even get started building this idea. You will typically go to an incubator. Very few of them give you money, but they give you the right resources enough for you to get started. The next one is accelerator programs. Typically accelerator programs, they like to see an MVP, a little bit more traction, and they want to get you to the next level. Typically like you'll raise from an incubator when you're doing your friends and family rounds. You raise from angel investment when you do your friends and family rounds. By the time you get to pre-seed, you might have micro VCs, and then you have accelerator programs. And then the next one will be micro VCs, and that's when a lot of us come in. Typically a micro VC is anybody that has a venture capital fund that will be in an African context, maybe between 1 million to 50 million. That would be considered a micro VC in the African market. But in the US, I would say anybody that is maybe doing between 1 to 100 million is a micro VC. And anybody above that can be considered now an institutional VC. They typically write higher check sizes, or they even typically have interest in investing like growth stage companies. So who invests in startup? We have angel investors, we have incubators and accelerator programs, we have venture capital funds. In fact, a lot of private equity funds who have been investing in startups as of late. It's not very common, but I've seen a few come out. That venture studios. Typically, with a venture studio, you're incubating a company within within the venture capital fund. So they don't just give you money; they might also provide you resources for marketing, resources for like product development, and so many other things that you would typically have to like hire people to be able to do that for you. But also in the last couple of years, we've seen an influx of corporate organizations. For example, Google is a big one, AWS is another big VC, and there's so many more corporates that are getting into the venture investing. Another ones are foundations. It's a little bit tricky for foundations when they're investing in startups, but they usually have a very specific allocation into tech startups. And when they return that investment, I don't think I'm going to get into details because it's like very complex explanation right now, but like typically foundations also invest in startups. And if you are thinking about investing in a startup, I have to say, and I've mentioned this a few times, investing in startup can be risky. Over 90% of startups, like it's given, over 90% of startups in the world end up failing within the first 7 to 10 years in business. So you have to be able to like really understand the kinds of investment that you're making in and be able to like fit your portfolio construction and your thesis in such a way that even if 90% of your companies were to fail, at least the remaining 1 to 10% might be able to return your capital, and if not, and even better, multiply that capital and give you at least 3 to 10x on your investment. For the African market specifically, here are 3 reasons why you should invest in startups in Africa that has nothing to do with the youth or the grind or all of that. I'll say the first thing, which is something that I preach a lot. In Africa right now, a lot of the technologies that have been built are things that were already proven in other markets. And what I mean by that is, in the US, in the last, I would say 20 to 30 years, we have seen a technological advancement of just like fintech and then marketplaces, and then like very recently we have seen like the growth of like AI and machine learning, and then like last year blockchain, but like that's a different story. A lot of those technologies are things that like normally become to life as people get on the internet, as people like grow their desire to use technology to make their life easier. We have seen the very similar thing happen in markets like China, India, Latin America, Europe, and I think that is happening right now across the African continent. Just since I've been here, I mean, I've used Bolt app for like my rides. I've used Glovo for like food delivery. Like that, there's just been like so many things that, and we're using it on a regular basis. Child deck, to be able to make our life easier. Yes, there's still challenges in so many emerging markets, but the younger population, we all have the same dreams. We all want a better life for ourselves, a better life for our families, a better life for our kids. And with the impact of the internet, we all want that mansion, we all want that Ferrari, right? Like we all want to have like that excessive lifestyle, and we know for us to be able to get to that stage, we have to be successful founders. We have to be able to like grow the capital. We have to be able to make an impact in this world, because the best way to become a billionaire is to serve a billion people. And and at the end of the day, there's so many opportunities that are happening in the African market. So it's actually less risky to invest in an African technology company right now, because you're not investing in something that you don't know. You know it has been successful in another market, and it's only a matter of time before that arrives in the African market. That's the first reason. If you had no other reason on like why you should be thinking about investing in Africa, I would say like that'd be the only thing, or at least the first thing that you want to think about when you're thinking about investing in the African market. The second reason is that a lot of the technology has been leapfrog. As we decided to like when you think about like blockchain technology or AI or even like like augmented reality and all of these new technologies that we're seeing today, there's a foundational layer that had to be built for them to get to this stage. Today, a lot of African technologies have the opportunity to skip that part because we already have the foundation. We just need to build technologies that are adapting to like our standard of living, our cultures, our currencies, and the way we live life on a regular basis. So not only that, and that makes the cost a lot more cheaper. It makes it a little bit easier to get started and to grow a business faster than it would have taken. Like, for example, like we all know of the Paystack acquisition. It got acquired in such a short amount of time versus like Scribe that took ages, right? For them to like figure it out, for them to be able to like find the right way, like interact with your customers, understand like how things work, and eventually build something that is meaningful today. I would say the third one is not necessarily the population, but I think that we have the talent. The talent is there. I took an example of China, I took an example of India, I took an example of LATAM. 5 to 10 years ago, when you thought about India, you thought about software engineers, right? Like everybody was outsourcing the software engineers in India. Over the last couple of years, India has become actually very expensive to do outsourcing because the lifestyle has changed. A lot of the engineers that were being used for outsourcing decided to go out and become their own founders, right? They decided to like go out and build their own technology businesses, and probably now like you probably won't be able to afford them. They're just as high as paying a developer in the US. Maybe not as high, but they're probably like on the 60 to 80% range of paying a developer in the US. I think today the African market has an opportunity where there's so many tech talent that are being trained right now. A lot of those talents are not necessarily thinking about building a company. They just want to have a really good paying salary, right? So there's an opportunity where a lot of corporations in the US, in Europe, or even in the African continent to be able to hire that workforce in the next 3 to 5 years. As they become really good qualified software engineers, they might want to start building their own applications. They might want to start becoming that founder. They might have saved enough money as software engineers to be able to sustain themselves as founders without necessarily having to worry about how they'll eat the next meal. And I think by that time, when that happens, we will see actually a bigger influx of tech entrepreneurs across the African ecosystem. And you don't want to be late. You want to come early, right? You want to come early so you can understand the market, how things work. You want to come early so that you can understand how to do business on the continent. And when that happens, I think there will be an amazing opportunity that nobody's paying attention to. All right, I think I have spoken enough, but I just wanted to give like a rough overview of why I am just bullish on investing in the African market. And I hope you got something out of it. And like always, I hope that you are living your best version of the African dream. Have a blessed day.